We're separated from the things around us. We all feel it. We all feel it. All of us who understand that something's up with the planet, we feel it. The Douglas fir is the dominant tree species by far in the Pacific Northwest. 90% of the conifers below 4,000 feet are Douglas fir. The Doug fir was very recently evolved, so it came into this niche, and the rest of the ecosystem hasn't figured out how to kind of bring it more into balance. But it's going away unless we reverse climate change. So we're expecting the Doug fir to no longer be native south of the Canadian border by the end of the century. It's kind of crazy, and it's actually kind of scary. If it goes away, like, well, will we have forests? How do we imagine the climate after the Douglas fir? Well, it's hard, but we got to start imagining it. I came at gardening from an activist perspective. When I came to this town, I expected to be a full-time activist for social and environmental change for the rest of my life. But I found that it was hard for me to be grounded, and that I really need to have my hands on the earth to feel like I can manage my mental health. We are not these distant observers. We as humans get to remember that we're part of an ecosystem. I want people to have little bits of that experience on an ongoing basis in their own backyard. I describe myself as an ecological garden designer and consultant. The folks who brought me into their landscapes, they were eager to talk about doing things differently. And so the natural thing was to bring in a lot of native plants into this landscape, what some people might call a naturescape, an intentionally designed garden that feels like nature. Native plants by themselves are nothing without their ecosystem, right? It's not the things in a system that matter, it's the relationships in a system that matter. And so if I can get people just smelling the plants in their yard, if I can get folks eating a few berries, picking some fruit, or have folks create a whole ecosystem where they get to observe more birds coming in or more insects coming in, and start to observe a dynamic system emerging, that's not just something they observe because they're passionate about it, but also something they get to participate in. We were evolved as kinesthetic beings. We were evolved to hunt and gather and travel long distances. We were designed to be out in nature touching things. And when you're indoors, you're just not getting enough friggin' light, right? Why am I indoors? I want to be outside. Go outside, right? Go outside, please. Whatever it takes you, go outside. There's just something about using your body to do a productive task and seeing the results. It's a feedback loop that we evolved with that we're just not getting because we were not evolved for the modern culture we're living in. People all over the country, all over the world are asking questions about ecology, the challenges facing our planet. I think the science is clear that we're headed for a major extinction event. I have complete confidence that life is going to exist on Earth, but I'm not sure it's going to exist above the microbial level if we keep doing what we're doing. It's a huge burden, but I'm not carrying it by myself, right? We're all carrying it together. We feel it. And it's frightening, and it's sad, right? It makes me want to cry. We need to grieve. We need to take time to grieve. And for those people who don't believe climate change is happening, those people are still seeing suffering happening around them. Droughts are getting more intense, right? Everybody's seeing that there's this kind of change. We need to be sad, we need to be scared, we need to be mad, angry, but we also need to accept that it's gonna be different and we can prepare for that. I'm lucky, I'm 60. The rest of you have to deal with the world you inherited. And I'm ashamed to pass it on. We got to figure out how to live with that reality on an emotional level. I grew up in a German-speaking family in America, and my folks emigrated in 1958. And they were just regular German citizens. They weren't a specially persecuted minority or anything like that. But as teenagers, they experienced bombs being dropped on them constantly, right? All the German cities were bombed. You know, my mom at one point had to travel back from the labor camp that all the teenagers all had to work in labor camps. So she was returning, and she was planning to take the train. At the last minute, she was offered a ride, which was rare. There weren't a lot of cars on the road during the war. And then that night, that train station got bombed and everybody in it died. And you got to remember, they were kids, right? They were teenagers. And there was no knowing they were ever going to experience hope in their lives, right? And the mood in the country was, this is the end. And then somehow the sun came out, and they eventually had a whole new lives in front of them. So I'm not saying that everybody who's hopeless today is going to have that experience, but I just want to point out that we think we're stuck in a hole where we are, and we can't see out of that hole. And we got to remember that so many things can happen in life. You know, we need to listen to each other. We need to figure out where we have things in common. That is the only way you can build bridges, is to be a good listener. If I had to live a few hundred years, I would just keep planting plants. And I'm going to fight for native plants whose ecosystems are dwindling to survive. But if they'll disappear, I'm going to fight for those weeds. For me, it's a joyous event to see a weed that has a really bad reputation poking out of a crack in the sidewalk. Because I'm like, that might just be the last plant on Earth. And if I get to see the last plant on Earth, that's still a good thing, right? I still get to celebrate the fact that life is happening and life comes back in spite of the odds. And I'm just going to be part of that process. But if we don't participate in that process, we forget. For those of you who have the privilege of getting to know and appreciating a somewhat intact native ecosystem, it's just a vibe you cannot replace. If you get to experience that, it's a deep source of inspiration. It's a reason to keep fighting. It's a reason to have optimism. For me, when I see a native plant, I think of intact native ecosystems that I've been in. They represent something worth fighting for. We all had ancestors that lived in those kinds of systems and that got to experience that. And I think that's tremendously exciting. I feel like my mission is to be more connected and create more connectivity in those places where I can. I think that's enough. You should do it because it matters, and you should do it because you care, and you should do it for the next generation, right? You should care about what happens to the next generation, not what happens at your damn funeral. I was checking for pollination or marshmallow.
Interesting.
Oh, go? Okay, sorry.
Oh, action.
I thought you were going to say
Action.
action. Okay.
Action.
Start again.